Commander Vex Thule of the Galactic Predator Council had exactly 3 things in common with a middle manager at a failing insurance company: an inflated sense of self-importance, a clipboard he treated like a holy relic, and the unshakable belief that proper documentation could solve any problem in the universe. "Pip," he announced to his quivering assistant, brandishing a holographic report like it contained the secrets of creation itself. "We have a situation." Pip, whose species had evolved from something resembling a nervous chihuahua crossed with a filing cabinet, immediately began hyperventilating through his gill slits. "Sir, is it the Void Wraiths again? The Plasma Bears? Oh stars, please tell me it's not the Quantum Hornets." "Worse." Vex Thule's 4 eyes gleamed with the particular satisfaction that came from delivering dramatic news. "It's a bureaucratic oversight of cosmic proportions." Now you have to understand something about the Galactic Predator Council. They were the self-appointed guardians of universal order, cataloging every dangerous species across 3 galaxy clusters with the obsessive dedication of stamp collectors. Their motto, roughly translated from ancient Pampas, was "Know your predators, respect the hierarchy, file in triplicate." Vex Thule adjusted his ceremonial shoulder spikes, which served no purpose except making him look more intimidating to creatures who weren't easily intimidated, and continued. "Planet designation Earth. Spiral arm backwater. Has somehow slipped through our classification system for over 50,000 years. 50,000 years? Pip squeaked, his nervous system doing that thing where it tried to escape through his ears. "Sir, that's longer than the great bureaucratic reorganization of—" "I know how long it's been, Pip." Vexel's tone suggested he was already regretting bringing his assistant along. "The preliminary report indicates they have something called apex predators. Lions, sharks, bears, the usual primitive nonsense." He pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's most dangerous creatures, each one labeled with threat assessments that would make an insurance actuary weep with joy. "Look at this amateur hour classification system. King of the jungle for an animal that doesn't even live in jungles. Great white shark when clearly superior, blue or purple would be more intimidating. And don't get me started on grizzly bears. What exactly are they grizzled about?" Pip nodded frantically, the way nervous underlings do when they're not sure if they're supposed to agree or disagree, but are absolutely sure that silence is dangerous. "Clearly," Vex Thule declared, puffing out his chest plates until he looked like a particularly aggressive piece of geometric furniture. "These Earth creatures need proper evaluation by actual predators. We'll conduct a field assessment, update their threat classifications, and probably have them all properly categorized before lunch." The irony, of course, was that Vex Thule had never actually encountered a genuinely dangerous predator in his 300 years of bureaucratic service. The Galactic Predator Council had been at the top of the food chain for so long that they'd forgotten what real danger felt like. Their last actual combat had been a strongly worded memo war with the Department of Interstellar Agriculture over proper carnivore licensing procedures. "Pack the standard intimidation kit," Vex Thule ordered, already mentally composing his post-mission report. "This should be a routine inspection of some moderately concerning mammals. What could possibly go wrong on a planet full of creatures that haven't even figured out faster-than-light travel?" Pip gathered their equipment with the resigned efficiency of someone who'd learned not to question his superior's confidence, even when that confidence was built on a foundation of cosmic ignorance and bureaucratic arrogance. Neither of them bothered to read the fine print on Earth's preliminary assessment, which included a small note buried in subsection 47C. "Warning, local species display inexplicable behavioral patterns. Recommend caution when engaging with any creature that appears harmless." But who reads the fine print anyway? The Serengeti looked exactly like the tourism brochures that nobody had sent to the Galactic Predator Council, which was to say absolutely magnificent and completely wasted on 2 aliens who'd arrived expecting to be impressed by what they assumed were knockoff versions of real predators. "Behold," Vex Thule announced, gesturing dramatically at the vast African savanna, as if he'd personally invented grasslands, "the habitat of Earth's supposedly fearsome lion." Their ship had landed with all the subtlety of a cosmic freight train, complete with unnecessary laser light shows and intimidation noises that sounded like a garbage disposal having an existential crisis. Yet somehow, the local wildlife had responded to this display of advanced alien technology with the universal animal equivalent of meh. "Sir," Pip whispered, consulting his scanner with the nervous energy of someone checking lottery numbers he knew were losers. "I'm detecting multiple large predators approaching our position." "Excellent." Vex Thule straightened his ceremonial battle harness, which had never seen actual battle, but looked very impressive in council meetings. "Time to show these primitive carnivores what a real apex predator looks like." The pride of lions that emerged from the tall grass moved with the casual confidence of creatures who'd never encountered anything more dangerous than a particularly aggressive gazelle. The lead male, a magnificent specimen with a mane that would make a hair salon weep with envy, looked at the two aliens with the expression of someone trying to figure out if the new neighbors were worth the effort of a proper introduction. Vexthul activated his universal intimidation protocol, which involved puffing up to maximum size, extending all available spikes, and making a noise that roughly translated to, "I am very dangerous, and you should be appropriately terrified." The lion yawned. Not a nervous yawn or a confused yawn, but the kind of deeply satisfied yawn that suggested he'd been considering a nap anyway, and these weird bipedal creatures were about as threatening as a particularly noisy butterfly. "This is highly irregular," Vexthul muttered, checking his intimidation settings. "According to the manual, inferior predators should display submission behaviors when confronted with superior galactic specimens." "Sir," Pip squeaked, "maybe we should try a different approach." "Nonsense. Clearly their primitive brains simply can't process our advanced threat displays." Vexthul activated his backup intimidation mode, which added laser pointer effects and what he believed were terrifying holographic projections. The lions, demonstrating the kind of intellectual curiosity that had made them successful predators, decided these strange creatures might be interesting enough to investigate. 3 of them began strolling over with the relaxed gait of house cats approaching a sunny windowsill. "Sir, they're getting closer." "Good. They're finally recognizing our superior predatory status." What happened next would later be described in Vexthul's official report as a minor miscalculation in interspecies communication protocols. What actually happened was that the lead lion walked right up to Vexthul, sniffed him with the thoroughness of a sommelier evaluating a questionable wine, and then proceeded to use the alien commander as a scratching post. 20 minutes later, after what could generously be called a tactical retreat and less generously called running away while screaming about inadequate xenobiology training, the 2 aliens found themselves floating in a protective bubble 300 feet above the Indian Ocean. "Perhaps," Vexthul said, his dignity somewhat compromised by the claw marks decorating his ceremonial armor, "the aquatic predators will prove more traditionally responsive to proper hierarchical protocols." The great white shark that emerged from the depths to investigate their underwater scanning equipment moved with the fluid grace of a creature that had perfected the art of being a shark for roughly 400 million years. It circled their observation bubble with the patient interest of someone window shopping for something they weren't quite sure they wanted. "Now this," Vexthul declared, "is more like it. A proper predator. Sleek, efficient, clearly evolved for maximum intimidation factor." The shark, demonstrating either profound intelligence or profound indifference, bumped the alien bubble with its nose, apparently decided they weren't food, weren't particularly interesting, and weren't worth the caloric expenditure of continued investigation. "Why?" Pip asked, with the voice of someone whose worldview was beginning to crack around the edges. "Do they keep ignoring our threat displays?" "Primitive neural development," Vexthul replied, though his confidence was beginning to sound like someone trying to convince themselves that everything was fine while their house burned down around them. Clearly these creatures operate on such basic instincts that they can't recognize superior predatory evolution when they encounter it. Their final test case brought them to the Arctic, where a polar bear the size of a small shuttlecraft was methodically fishing through an ice hole with the focused concentration of someone who'd never doubted their place in the universe. "This one," Vexthul announced, "will surely recognize our status. Look at those massive claws, that efficient hunting posture. Clearly a creature that understands predatory hierarchy." The polar bear looked up from its fishing, observed the 2 aliens floating nearby in their climate-controlled suits, and made a decision that would have impressed philosophers across the galaxy for its elegant simplicity. These strange creatures were neither food, nor threat, nor particularly interesting. Therefore they qualified for the most devastating response in the polar bear playbook: complete and utter indifference. "Sir," Pip said, his voice now carrying the hollow tone of someone whose faith in universal order had been systematically dismantled by 3 different continents, "maybe our intimidation systems are malfunctioning?" "Impossible." Vexthul's certainty was beginning to sound suspiciously like desperation. "We simply need to find a creature with sufficient intellectual development to appreciate our obvious superiority. Something with enough cognitive capacity to understand the natural order of predatory dominance." What they needed, he decided, was to find something smaller and less impressive than lions, sharks, and polar bears. something harmless-looking that would provide a confidence boost before they filed their report. Something that wouldn't challenge their fundamental assumptions about how the universe was supposed to work. Something like that cute little black and white fuzzy creature they could see in the distance, casually wandering through what appeared to be a nature preserve. Now, if Vextool had bothered to consult Earth's wildlife databases, or honestly just asked literally anyone who'd spent more than 5 minutes on the planet, he would have learned that there are certain creatures you simply don't mess with. Honey badgers occupy the very top of that list, right above Australian everything and slightly below whatever unholy thing your cat is staring at in the corner at 3 in the morning. But Vextool was a bureaucrat, which meant he approached the universe with the confident ignorance of someone who'd never encountered a problem that couldn't be solved with the proper paperwork. "Perfect," he announced, gesturing at what he assumed was some sort of decorative mammal. "A harmless local creature. This will restore our credibility as apex predators." Bruiser, though the aliens didn't know his name yet, was having what could generously be called a typical Tuesday. He'd started the morning by evicting a family of cobras from a burrow he'd decided he wanted, spent the afternoon systematically destroying a beehive for the sheer joy of destruction, and was now considering whether that tourist van in the distance contained anything worth stealing. The fact that he was currently covered in approximately 3,000 bee stings didn't bother him in the slightest. Honey badgers operate on a simple philosophy. Pain is temporary, but honey is delicious, and anyone who has a problem with that arrangement is welcome to take it up with management. "Observe, Pip," Vextool said, activating his specimen collection protocols. "A docile scavenger, probably subsists on insects and small vegetation. This will demonstrate our superior predatory capabilities to a creature with appropriate respect for the natural order." Pip, whose survival instincts had been finely tuned by 300 years of working for Vextool, felt a familiar chill of impending disaster. "Sir, perhaps we should observe from a distance first." "Nonsense. Look at it, Pip, it's practically a stuffed animal." Bruiser, who had been ignoring the aliens with the same casual indifference he showed to bee stings, explosions, and strongly worded warnings from park rangers, suddenly found his attention captured by something far more interesting than their conversation. Their ship's landing gear appeared to be made of some sort of metal alloy that might be useful for getting into that particularly stubborn termite mound he'd been working on. "Deploying containment field," Vextool announced, activating what the Galactic Predator Council considered state-of-the-art specimen capture technology. A shimmering energy barrier materialized around Bruiser, designed to temporarily immobilize creatures up to the size of a small spacecraft. Bruiser looked at the energy field with the expression of someone who'd just been presented with an interesting new toy. He reached out with one claw and touched it experimentally. The containment field, which had successfully held void wraiths and quantum phase predators, flickered uncertainly. "That's odd," Vextool muttered, checking his readings. "The field appears to be destabilizing." What happened next defied several fundamental laws of physics, most principles of common sense, and at least 3 interstellar treaties regarding the proper use of advanced technology. Bruiser didn't break the containment field so much as he convinced it to stop existing through sheer force of personality. "Sir," Pip whispered, his voice carrying the tone of someone watching their worldview collapse in real time. "How did it do that?" "Impossible," Vextool declared, the way people do when reality refuses to conform to their expectations. "Deploy backup containment protocols." The backup containment protocols involved more energy, bigger barriers, and what the manual described as foolproof restraint systems. Bruiser treated them the same way a particularly determined toddler treats child-proof locks, as a minor inconvenience that yielded to sufficient application of focused stubbornness. Within 30 seconds, he'd not only escaped but had somehow managed to reverse engineer the containment technology and was now using it to systematically dismantle their scanning equipment. "This is highly irregular," Vextool announced, activating his personal defense systems, initiating direct predator confrontation protocols. Now Vextool had been trained in 17 different forms of galactic combat, certified in the use of 43 types of energy weapons, and had graduated summa cum laude from the Academy of Advanced Intimidation. What he had never encountered was a creature that approached conflict with the philosophical framework of, "I don't care what you are, what you want, or why you think you're important. You're in my way, and that makes you my problem." The battle that followed would later be studied by xenobiologists across 3 galaxy clusters, assuming any of them were brave enough to visit Earth after reading Vextool's final report. Bruiser's opening move was elegantly simple. He ignored every single one of Vextool's energy weapons, walked directly through his defensive barriers, and began methodically dismantling the alien commander's ceremonial armor, with the focused efficiency of someone taking apart a particularly stubborn piece of furniture. "Pip!" Vexthul screamed, his dignity departing faster than his protective equipment. "Deploy the emergency retreat protocols!" Pip, demonstrating the kind of quick thinking that had kept him alive through decades of bureaucratic disasters, activated their emergency teleportation system. Nothing happened. Bruiser had apparently decided that their teleportation beacon looked like something that might be useful for digging, and had relocated it to a location that was technically classified, but could best be described as somewhere uncomfortable. What followed was less a battle between galactic predators and Earth wildlife, and more a comprehensive demonstration of why honey badgers have a reputation that stretches across dimensions. Vexthul's advanced combat training proved completely useless against an opponent who responded to energy blasts by getting mildly annoyed and tactical retreats, by following him with the patient determination of someone who had all day and several very specific ideas about property redistribution. 27 minutes later, both aliens found themselves hanging upside down from a tree, wrapped in what had formerly been their own communication cables, watching Bruiser systematically convert their landing craft into what appeared to be the galaxy's most expensive honey extraction tool. "Sir," Pip wheezed, his remaining dignity hanging by approximately the same thread as his current physical position, "perhaps we should update our threat assessment protocols." Vexthul, whose worldview had been so thoroughly demolished that he was beginning to question fundamental concepts like up, down, and why did I choose this career, could only watch as Bruiser emerged from their ship carrying what looked like their entire weapons array. "What," he asked the universe in general, "is that creature?" As if in answer to his existential crisis, a small voice piped up from below them. "Oh, that's just Bruiser. He's a honey badger. They don't really care about stuff." 8-year-old Tommy Rodriguez had been having the kind of day that makes childhood memorable. He'd successfully convinced his mom to bring him to the nature preserve for what she thought was educational enrichment, and what he knew was premium animal watching time. He'd already spotted 3 different types of birds, identified 2 species of beetles, and was maintaining a running commentary that demonstrated the kind of encyclopedia knowledge that only kids with nature obsessions possess. "Mom, look, there's people in the tree." Maria Rodriguez, who was juggling a camera crew, 17 different permits, and the logistics of filming a nature documentary while keeping track of her enthusiastic son, looked up from her clipboard to see what appeared to be 2 very large, very colorful people hanging upside down, like the world's most elaborate piñata. "Tommy, those aren't people, those are..." She stopped mid-sentence because honestly she had no idea what those were. "Stay right there while I figure this out." Tommy, demonstrating the selective hearing that all children develop around the age of 4, was already walking toward the tree with the fearless curiosity of someone who'd never met a creature that didn't want to be his friend. "Hey," he called up to the dangling aliens, "are you guys okay? That looks super uncomfortable." Vexthul, whose day had already redefined his understanding of humiliation, found himself staring down at what appeared to be a miniature human. According to his files, humans were the dominant species on this planet, which meant this small creature represented Earth's apex intelligence. "Child," he declared with as much dignity as someone hanging upside down could muster, "I am Commander Vexthul of the Galactic Predator Council. We are apex predators from the stars, conducting official business on your primitive world." Tommy tilted his head the way kids do when adults say something that doesn't quite make sense. "You don't look like predators. You look like you got beat up by Bruiser." "Beat up?" Vexthul's voice cracked slightly. "We are sophisticated galactic warriors who were temporarily inconvenienced by a malfunctioning local creature." "Oh, Bruiser's not malfunctioning," Tommy said helpfully. "He's just being a honey badger. They're like that." Pip, who had been quietly having what psychologists would later classify as a species-wide existential crisis, managed to wheeze out, "What exactly is a honey badger?" Tommy's face lit up with the expression kids get when someone asks them about their favorite subject. "They're the coolest. They don't care about anything. Like literally nothing. Bee stings, snake bites, lions, nothing bothers them. My dad says they're what you'd get if you took all the attitude in the world and squeezed it into a 20-pound package." "But," Vexthul protested, "we're galactic apex predators. We have advanced technology, superior evolutionary development, cosmic authority." "Yeah, but you're not honey badgers," Tommy interrupted with the brutal logic that only children possess. "Bruiser doesn't care about any of that stuff. He just sees things he wants and takes them. Look, he's making a fort out of your spaceship." They all turned to observe Bruiser, who had indeed converted their landing craft into what appeared to be an elaborate honey badger fortress, complete with multiple escape tunnels and what looked suspiciously like a communications array repurposed as a backscratcher. "This is impossible," Vextool muttered. "According to universal predatory hierarchy, superior species dominate inferior ones through displays of strength, technology, and tactical advantage." Tommy considered this with the serious expression kids reserve for explaining obvious things to confused adults. "Well, yeah, but honey badgers didn't get the memo. They just do whatever they want. My teacher says they're what happens when evolution decides to give something unlimited confidence and zero fear." "But how do you control them?" Pip asked desperately. "You don't," Tommy said cheerfully. "That's the point. You just stay out of their way and hope they don't want whatever you have. Want me to get you down from there?" The idea that these galactic predators needed rescue from an 8-year-old was almost too much for Vextool's remaining dignity to bear. "We are perfectly capable of extricating ourselves from this temporary tactical disadvantage." "Tommy!" Maria's voice carried the particular tone that meant business. "What did I tell you about talking to strangers?" "But Mom, they're stuck in a tree." Maria approached with the cautious stride of someone trying to figure out if she was looking at an elaborate prank, a film production, or something that required calling authorities she didn't even know existed. "Excuse me," she called up to the aliens, "are you folks okay? Do you need help getting down?" Vextool stared at the adult human, trying to process the fact that she was showing concern rather than the appropriate fear response to encountering galactic predators. "We are fine. This is a routine predator assessment procedure." "In costumes?" Maria asked, because honestly, what else could they be wearing? "These are advanced combat systems," Vextool began. "They're really good costumes," Maria interrupted, pulling out her phone. "Are you guys filming something? Because if you're doing a nature documentary, you should probably coordinate with the Park Service, safety regulations and all that." Tommy, meanwhile, had walked over to where Bruiser was methodically converting alien technology into honey badger infrastructure. "Hi, Bruiser. These space guys don't understand how awesome you are." Bruiser paused in his systematic deconstruction of their sensor array, looked at Tommy with the expression of someone acknowledging a fellow professional, and went back to work. "See?" Tommy said to the dangling aliens. "He likes me because I don't try to put force fields around him or shoot him with laser guns. I just let him do his honey badger thing." "But we're apex predators," Vextool said weakly. "So is he," Tommy replied. "The difference is, he doesn't need to tell everyone about it." Maria, who had been taking pictures because this was either the weirdest documentary setup she'd ever seen or something she'd need evidence of later, walked over to get her son. "Tommy, leave the nice people in costumes alone. They're probably trying to work." "They're not working, Mom. They're hanging upside down because they tried to mess with a honey badger." "A honey badger did this?" Maria looked up at the two elaborate figures dangling from her local nature preserve's oak tree. "Seriously?" "Bruiser's pretty territorial," Tommy explained. "Plus, they had shiny stuff, and he likes shiny stuff." Maria sighed the way parents do when reality refuses to make sense, but they still have to deal with it. "Do you need me to call someone? Park rangers? Insurance company? Costume repair service?" "Perhaps," Pip said quietly. "We could start with just getting down from this tree." "I can help with that," Tommy said enthusiastically. "I'm really good at knots. Dad taught me when we went camping." And so it was that Commander Vextool of the Galactic Predator Council, conqueror of 17 star systems and certified apex predator of 3 galaxy clusters, found himself being rescued from a tree by an 8-year-old boy who treated the entire situation like a fun puzzle rather than a cosmic humiliation. "There you go," Tommy said as the aliens stumbled to the ground, their dignity in approximately the same condition as their equipment. "You should probably put some ice on those scratches. Honey badger claws are really sharp." "Thank you," Pip whispered, because even in the midst of an existential crisis, politeness matters. Tommy beamed with the satisfaction of someone who'd helped solve a problem. "Do you guys want me to show you some other cool animals? Just, from a distance this time." Vextool looked at this small human child who had just casually rescued 2 galactic predators from a tree, showed no fear of creatures that had terrorized 3 galaxy clusters, and was now offering them a nature tour like this was the most normal thing in the universe. "What?" he asked slowly. "Are humans?" Tommy grinned. "We're the weird ones. Dad says we're what you get when evolution can't decide if it wants to make something really smart or really stupid, so it just makes something really stubborn instead." In the background, Bruiser emerged from their ship carrying what appeared to be their entire navigation system, which he was now using as a very expensive chew toy. "He's going to keep that, isn't he?" Vextool asked weakly. "Oh yeah," Tommy said cheerfully. "Honey badgers don't really do returns." Tommy Rodriguez had the teaching instincts of someone who genuinely loved sharing knowledge, which is why he completely missed the existential terror in Vex Thul's eyes when he enthusiastically offered to explain more about Earth's wildlife. To Tommy, this was like Christmas morning. Two very interested adults who wanted to learn about animals, and a whole nature preserve to use as his classroom. Okay, so honey badgers are just the beginning, Tommy said, settling cross-legged on the ground with the comfortable authority of someone about to deliver a comprehensive lecture. Earth has tons of animals that don't follow normal rules. Vex Thul and Pip, still recovering from their tree-dangling experience, sat down with the careful movements of beings whose understanding of universal order had been thoroughly scrambled. In the background, Bruiser continued his systematic conversion of alien technology into honey badger amenities, occasionally pausing to give them a look that clearly said, "I'm not done with you yet." "Take geese," Tommy continued, warming to his subject. "They look all peaceful and pretty, right? But they're basically feathered terrorists. My Uncle Rick says they're what you get when evolution decides to put the attitude of a honey badger into something with wings and a really bad temper." "Surely," Vex Thul said weakly, "waterfowl cannot be considered apex predators." "Tell that to my cousin Jake," Tommy interrupted. "He tried to take a selfie with some Canada geese at the park last year. They chased him 3 blocks. 3 blocks! And they were honking the whole time like they were coordinating an attack." Pip made a small whimpering sound that suggested his worldview was continuing its steady disintegration. "And cats," Tommy said, his eyes lighting up with the particular joy of someone who'd found his groove. "House cats are amazing. They're like tiny lions, except lions actually care about things like territory and hunting for food. House cats just knock stuff off tables because they think it's funny." "But they're domesticated," Vex Thul protested. "Surely they pose no threat to superior species." "My neighbor Mrs. Chen has this cat named Mr. Whiskers," Tommy said. "He once stared down a coyote in their backyard, not fought it, just stared at it until the coyote got uncomfortable and left. Dad says cats have perfected the art of psychological warfare." Maria, who had been listening while organizing her equipment, called over. "Tell them about Australian animals, honey. That should be educational." Tommy's face lit up like someone had just offered him unlimited ice cream. Oh man. Australia is like Earth's practice run for making everything dangerous. They have spiders that eat birds, jellyfish that can kill you just by looking at them wrong, and something called a drop bear that... "Drop bears aren't real, Tommy," Maria said patiently. "That's what they want you to think," Tommy replied, with the serious expression of someone sharing classified information. "But the real scary thing about Australia is that it's got all these deadly animals, and then there's Australians who just live there like it's no big deal." Vex Thul felt a familiar chill of apprehension. "What do you mean?" "Well, they've got crocodiles that can grow to 20 feet long, snakes with enough venom to kill 100 people, spiders the size of dinner plates, and sharks that can bite boats in half. And Australians are like, yeah, no worries, mate, just watch where you step." Pip made another small noise, this one suggesting that his grip on reality was becoming increasingly tenuous. "But the really weird thing about humans," Tommy continued, settling into what was clearly going to be a major philosophical point, "is that we keep dangerous animals as pets." "Excuse me?" Vex Thul asked faintly. "My friend Sarah has a python named Gerald. Gerald could totally squeeze the life out of someone if he wanted to, but mostly he just hangs out in his tank and judges people. And my other friend Mike has a tarantula named Princess Fuzzybutt, who's super sweet, but could probably bite through your finger if she was having a bad day." "Why," Pip whispered, "would you voluntarily cohabitate with creatures capable of causing you harm?" "Because they're cool," Tommy said, with the simple logic that made perfect sense to 8-year-olds and absolutely no sense to anyone else. "Plus, humans are really good at making friends with things that could kill us. We domesticated wolves into dogs, turned giant scary aurochs into cows, and convinced horses to let us ride them around, even though they could kick our heads clean off." Vex Thul stared at this small human who was casually describing his species' tendency to befriend apex predators like it was a hobby. "Are all humans this cavalier about mortal danger?" "Not cavalier," Tommy corrected seriously. "We just don't see the point in being scared of everything. Like, my dad goes rock climbing on weekends. That's basically hanging off cliffs for fun. My mom does something called extreme mountain biking, where she rides down mountains really fast on purpose. And my grandpa was a Marine, which means he volunteered to go places where people were shooting at him." "But why?" Pip asked desperately. "Because it's awesome," Tommy said with the conviction of someone stating an obvious truth. "Humans like doing stuff that's dangerous, because dangerous stuff is usually more fun than safe stuff. That's why we invented things like roller coasters, bungee jumping, and spicy food." In the distance, Bruiser emerged from the alien ship carrying what appeared to be their emergency beacon, which he was now using to dig what looked like the beginnings of an elaborate tunnel system. "Is he going to give any of that back?" Vexthul asked, though he already knew the answer. "Probably not," Tommy said sympathetically. "But look on the bright side. You're getting to see honey badger engineering in action. Most people don't get that kind of educational opportunity." Maria walked over with a first aid kit, having decided that regardless of whether these were elaborate costume performers or actual aliens, they looked like they needed medical attention. "Here, let me look at those scratches. Honey badger claws can be pretty nasty." "Ma'am," Vexthul said as she efficiently cleaned his wounds with the practiced competence of someone who'd raised an adventurous child, "are you not concerned that we might be dangerous?" Maria paused in her bandaging to give him a look that suggested she was reconsidering his mental health status. "Honey, you just got beaten up by a 20-pound mammal and rescued from a tree by my 8-year-old. I'm pretty sure I can handle whatever threat level you represent. Besides," Tommy added helpfully, "if you were really dangerous, Bruiser would still be fighting you instead of redecorating your spaceship." "It's not a spaceship," Vexthul said automatically, then stopped because, honestly, what was the point of maintaining the fiction at this stage? "So it is a spaceship," Tommy said with the excitement of someone who'd just solved a puzzle. "That's so cool. Are you really aliens? Can you show me how it works? You have laser guns? Have you been to other planets?" "Tommy," Maria said, in the warning tone parents use when their children are about to embark on enthusiastic interrogation, "let the nice aliens finish their whatever it is they're doing." The casual acceptance in her voice, not fear, not excitement, just practical acknowledgement that aliens existed and were apparently having a rough day in her local nature preserve, was somehow more unsettling to Vexthul than if she'd screamed or fainted. "How," he asked slowly, "are you all so calm about this?" Tommy shrugged with the philosophical wisdom that comes naturally to children. "Dad always says that the universe is full of weird stuff, and getting upset about it doesn't make it less weird. Plus, you seem pretty nice. Bruiser wouldn't be ignoring you if you were actually bad guys." "The honey badger is our character reference," Pip asked weakly. "Best reference you could ask for," Tommy said seriously. "Bruiser's got excellent judgment about people. He only attacks things that are either threats, food, or in possession of something shiny he wants." As if summoned by the mention of his name, Bruiser appeared carrying what looked like their quantum flux capacitor, which he'd apparently decided would make an excellent addition to his growing collection of alien technology. "Yup," Tommy said with satisfaction, "he definitely likes you guys. If he didn't, you'd still be hanging from that tree." Vexthul watched his ship's vital components being redistributed according to honey badger logic, and felt the last remnants of his galactic superiority complex crumble into dust. "What," he asked the universe in general, "have we gotten ourselves into?" 3 weeks later, Commander Vexthul sat in the sterile comfort of his office at Galactic Predator Council headquarters, staring at a report that had taken him 14 drafts to write, and would probably take the review board several therapy sessions to process. His ceremonial armor had been repaired, his dignity remained a work in progress, and his understanding of how the universe was supposed to function had been permanently altered by 27 minutes of interaction with a creature that weighed less than his lunch. "Sir," Pip said from the doorway, speaking in the careful tone of someone who'd spent the last 3 weeks having very detailed conversations with the staff psychologist, "the council is ready for your presentation." Vexthul looked at his assistant, noting that Pip had developed a nervous twitch whenever anyone mentioned small mammals, and nodded with the resignation of someone about to deliver news that would fundamentally challenge the cosmic order. The Galactic Predator Council's main chamber was an impressive display of bureaucratic intimidation, designed to reinforce the natural hierarchy of the universe through careful use of dramatic lighting, imposing architecture, and chairs that were just uncomfortable enough to discourage lengthy debates. The 7 council members, each representing the apex predators of their respective galaxy clusters, waited with the patient attention of beings who were used to hearing about planets that had been properly categorized and filed according to established protocols. "Council members," Vexthul began, his voice carrying only the slightest tremor of someone whose worldview had been systematically dismantled by a nature preserve, "I present the updated classification for planet Earth designation." Well, we need to discuss the designation. Chairman Crocs, whose species had evolved from something resembling a cross between a dragon and a very large accountant, leaned forward with interest. "Proceed with your assessment, Commander. Earth's new classification is as follows." Vexthul took a deep breath, knowing that what he was about to say would be discussed in xenobiology textbooks for the next 1,000 years. "Threat level, Do not engage. Recommended approach. Immediate quarantine with minimum safe observation distance of, let's call it 1 solar system. The council chamber fell silent, with the particular quality of silence that occurs when a group of highly intelligent beings realizes they're about to hear something that will keep them awake at night. Commander, Council Member Vexilla inquired with the careful politeness of someone asking about a potential galaxy-threatening situation. Perhaps you could elaborate on the specific nature of this threat assessment. Vextool activated his presentation hologram, which displayed Earth rotating peacefully in space, like the most deceptively innocent planet in the known universe. The primary threat is not, as initially assessed, the presence of conventional apex predators. Then what is the threat? Chairman Crox asked, though his tone suggested he wasn't sure he wanted to know. The threat, Vextool said with the measured tone of someone delivering catastrophic news, is that nothing on this planet follows logical behavioral patterns. The entire ecosystem operates on principles of controlled chaos, inhabited by species that have either evolved beyond the concept of appropriate fear responses or never developed them in the first place. He clicked to his next slide, which showed a honey badger in what appeared to be its natural state of generalized destruction. Exhibit A, Mellivora capensis, locally known as the honey badger. 25 pounds of concentrated hostility that approaches conflict with the philosophical framework of, I don't care what you are, you're in my way. Councilmember Zethmok, whose species had conquered 17 star systems through careful application of superior firepower, raised a tentacle. Surely a 25-pound creature poses no significant threat to galactic-class predators. This particular specimen, Vextool continued with the tone of someone recounting a natural disaster, disabled our containment systems, reversed engineered our defensive technology, and systematically converted our entire landing craft into what can best be described as honey badger infrastructure. It accomplished this while ignoring several thousand bee stings, our energy weapons, and basic principles of self-preservation. The council exchanged glances that suggested they were beginning to understand why Vextool had requested hazard pay for filing this report. But the honey badgers are not the primary concern, Vextool continued, clicking to a slide showing various Earth creatures engaged in behavior that defied standard predator-prey models. The primary concern is that this represents standard operating procedure for Earth's ecosystem. The planet contains geese that launch coordinated attacks on creatures 50 times their size, domestic cats that engage in psychological warfare, and an entire continent where every species appears to have been designed by someone with a very dark sense of humor. What about the dominant species? Chairman Crox asked carefully. Vextool's expression took on the haunted quality of someone who'd witnessed something that fundamentally challenged his understanding of how intelligence was supposed to work. Humans, he said slowly, represent perhaps the greatest threat to galactic stability we have ever encountered. Are they warriors? Council Member Vexilla asked hopefully, because warriors could be understood, fought, or negotiated with. No, they are worse. Vextool clicked to a slide showing Tommy Rodriguez's cheerful face. They are educators. The council waited for elaboration with the tense anticipation of beings who sensed they were about to learn something horrible. The juvenile human specimen showed no fear response when encountering galactic-class predators. Instead, it offered assistance, provided comprehensive educational briefings on local wildlife, and treated our presence as what it termed an awesome learning opportunity. The adult human demonstrated casual acceptance of our existence and offered medical aid, despite having no logical reason to assume we were not hostile. Surely that indicates primitive threat assessment capabilities, suggested Councilmember Thrax. Further analysis reveals that humans possess fully functional threat recognition systems. They simply choose to ignore them when the situation seems educational, interesting, or fun. Vextool paused to let this sink in. They voluntarily cohabitate with creatures capable of killing them, engage in recreational activities with significant mortality risks, and have developed what they call extreme sports, which appear to involve creating additional dangers for entertainment purposes. The silence in the chamber had taken on a quality that suggested several council members were reconsidering their understanding of how evolution was supposed to work. The human child, Vextool continued relentlessly, explained that his species routinely befriends apex predators, treats dangerous situations as learning experiences, and considers our technology pretty cool, rather than appropriately intimidating. When asked why humans approach danger so casually, it replied, and I quote, "Because dangerous stuff is usually more fun than safe stuff." Councilmember Zethmach made a small noise that might have been a whimper. "What is your recommended classification protocol?" Chairman Crox asked with the voice of someone who already knew the answer would be terrible. "Planet Earth is to be immediately designated as a Category 12 psychological hazard," Vextool announced. "Primary threat. Exposure to local species results in fundamental questioning of universal order, logical behavioral patterns, and one's place in the cosmic hierarchy. Secondary threat. Local ecosystem challenges basic assumptions about how reality functions. Tertiary threat. Inhabitants display inexplicable kindness toward obviously superior species, resulting in severe cognitive dissonance and potential career-ending philosophical crises among visiting predators." "And the quarantine recommendation?" Councilmember Zethmach inquired, his voice barely above a whisper. "Minimum safe distance, 1 solar system. Maximum recommended observation time, 30 minutes, and only with full psychological support teams on standby. Under no circumstances should any council member attempt direct contact with local species, particularly small mammals, juvenile humans, or anything that appears harmless." Vextool clicked to his final slide, which showed a hand-drawn picture of what was clearly meant to be a honey badger, wearing an astronaut helmet, surrounded by crayon stars and accompanied by text in the wobbly handwriting of someone who was still mastering the finer points of spelling. "4 days ago," he said quietly, "I received this communication from the juvenile human. It appears to be what they call a get-well card, expressing hope that we had recovered from our educational experience and inviting us to return for what it terms more awesome learning opportunities about Earth animals." The council stared at the cheerful drawing of an astronaut honey badger surrounded by rainbow stars, and the words, "Feel better soon," written in bright red crayon. "The communication," Vextool added with the tone of someone delivering cosmic horror disguised as childhood innocence, "somehow located our headquarters, despite the fact that our location is classified at the highest levels of galactic security. It was delivered via their postal system, which apparently operates according to principles we do not understand and cannot replicate." Chairman Crox looked at the get-well card, then at his fellow council members, then back at the card with the expression of someone watching their understanding of the universe fold itself into increasingly impossible shapes. "Motion to approve immediate quarantine status for planet Earth?" he asked weakly. "Seconded," came the immediate chorus from the other 6 council members. "All in favor of designating Earth as a Category 12 psychological hazard with indefinite quarantine protocols?" 7. Tentacles, claws, appendages, and other voting implements shot up simultaneously with the desperate enthusiasm of beings who'd just found a way to officially avoid thinking about something too disturbing to process. Motion carried unanimously. Planet Earth is hereby classified as Category 12 psychological hazard. Quarantine effective immediately. All future observations to be conducted remotely using unmanned probes from maximum safe distance. Chairman Crox paused, then added with the generosity of someone who was grateful not to be filing this report himself. "Commendation to Commander Vextool for surviving first contact with a Category 12 situation and maintaining sufficient psychological stability to file a coherent report." Later, as Pip helped file the paperwork that would officially protect the galaxy from exposure to Earth's particular brand of educational chaos, he asked the question that had been bothering him for 3 weeks. "Sir, should we respond to the get-well card?" Vextool looked at the cheerful drawing of an astronaut honey badger, considered the implications of further correspondence with beings who treated galactic predators as learning opportunities, and carefully filed the card in his desk drawer next to his emergency therapy contact information. "Pip," he said, with the hard-won wisdom of someone who'd learned that some questions were better left unanswered, "some mysteries of the universe are best appreciated from a safe distance. Preferably a distance measurable in light years." And so Earth remained uncontacted by galactic civilization, not because humanity hadn't been discovered, but because the aliens were too psychologically traumatized to risk a return visit. In the official records, Earth was listed with a single warning that would puzzle xenobiologists for generations. Inhabitants possess inexplicable ability to make friends with anything, including galactic predators. Recommend continued quarantine for everyone's peace of mind. In a nature preserve on a small blue planet, Tommy Rodriguez continued his ongoing project of cataloging local wildlife, while a honey badger named Bruiser worked on what had become the most sophisticated honey extraction and storage facility in 3 galaxy clusters, powered entirely by repurposed alien technology and the kind of focused determination that had made honey badgers the unofficial mascots of controlled chaos. The universe, as Tommy's dad had always said, was full of weird stuff. The Galactic Predator Council had simply learned that some weird stuff was best admired from very, very far away, preferably while filling out the appropriate forms to make sure nobody else had to experience it firsthand.